Do you even understand what you're saying?
The courtroom was hushed, but the silence was almost palpable. Each rustle of paper, each cough, each movement of a chair was amplified like thunder. Christine and Janelle sat side by side, their faces in concordant calm, their faces a blend of quiet fortitude and sorrow. On the opposite side of the aisle, Mary sat and watched, her face impassive, although her eyes revealed the toll of years of silence. And then, there was Robyn. She sat a few seats removed from Kody, her face puffy with a day's worth of crying. A crumpled tissue trembled in her fingers as if it were all she had left to cling to. Weeks she had said it to anyone who would hear her, the attorneys, the clerks, even the cameras lurking in the background, that she was certain she still could save this family, save this man sitting next to her. But now, before the judge, in the brutal white glare of truth, her words would be weighed once and for all. The bailiff rang for order as the judge appeared. Gavel came down once. It wasn't really wood on wood. It was a hammer crashing down on decades of deceit, money schemes, and emotional treason. Everyone in the room tensed. Kody hunched forward, his jaw rigid, rage quivering in each motion. His hair, that indulgent fall of blonde curls, looked rumpled, as if even it had been swept up in the tempest he had unleashed. He spoke low to Robyn, something bitter and venomous, though his voice was lost in the judge's thundering voice. "This is your last opportunity to speak, Mrs. Brown. Weeks of testimony have been heard in this court. We've had evidence of financial mismanagement, cover-ups for assets, and emotional damage to the parties. But you maintain that you had something left to say." The courtroom swiveled around Robyn, all eyes on her. This was it. Her final appeal. Her voice shook at first, only a whisper. "Your Honor, this isn't how it seems. Kody was just trying to protect us, to protect the family." She scanned the room, her eyes frantically searching for sympathy, for understanding. Yes, there were mistakes made. Yes, there were choices made. Unorthodox choices. But he did it out of love, for us. Christine tensed in her chair, her lips compressing into a narrow line. Janelle tilted forward slightly, eyes blazing. To them, these were simply words that were nothing more than an insult, a poor attempt to rationalize years of control and manipulation. The judge, on the other hand, did not move, his expression unreadable. Robyn's voice became louder, more desperate. "If you take Coyote Pass away, if you take everything we've created, what's left of us? This family, it will be ruined. And I can't be the one to make it stop. Please don't let them destroy us. Don't let them win." Tears streamed down her face. She grasped at her chest, at her necklace, at anything that could hold her in this moment. Her shoulders heaved spasmodically, the noise of her sobbing filling the otherwise empty chamber. But on the other side of the aisle, Christine's soothing voice lingered in memory. The tape played days ago when she spoke her truth. This was never about love. This was about control. About money. About lies that grew too big to hide. The dichotomy was impossible to resist. One woman softly exposing the truth, another attempting to smother it with tears. Kody finally unseated himself, banging his hand on the table. "This is ridiculous. They're turning this into a circus. Robyn's right. I did this for my family. They've distorted everything. They're all against me." His voice grew to a near shout before his attorney pulled on his sleeve, pleading with him to sit. The judge's gavel banged once more. "Order." Robyn stretched out her hand to Kody, shaking. "Please, Your Honor," she pleaded, her voice on the verge of cracking. "Don't take this from us. Don't take him away. He's a good man. He's a good father. We can make this right. We can—" The judge leaned over. His words sliced like metal. "Mrs. Brown, the court operates on facts, not fantasy. You talk of love, of family, of might-have-beens, but the evidence tells a different tale. A tale of deception, manipulation, and betrayal. This is your final plea, and it has been heard. But it will not alter the verdict." The gavel fell again. Robyn's tears crumpled into stillness. And with that, the whole courtroom was aware. No amount of tears, no matter how hard she held on to Kody's arm, would change what was already written. This was the start of the end. The quiet that followed the judge's words was like a dense curtain dropping. Robyn hung forward in her chair, eyes scanning wildly toward Kody as if looking for rescue. But even Kody, his face red and smoldering, was helpless in this instant. Christine leaned forward, her own calm, steady voice resounding as her lawyer stood. "Your Honor, the other side talks of family and love, but we have before us documented evidence of deception, of hidden assets, of promises made and broken. This isn't about tears. This is about truth." The judge nodded, indicating for the papers to be brought forward. The bailiff brought a thick folder to the bench. Stamped across the top, K&R Holdings, LLC. The courtroom hummed with gasps. Christine and Janelle's lawyers had discovered the very company that Kody and Robyn had secretly formed. One meant to direct money, to hide assets, and to keep secrets from the rest of the family. Christine's lawyer riffled through the pages, everyone resounding like a nail in the coffin. "Your Honor, payments diverted into K&R Holdings with non-disclosure to the other spouses. Land contracts executed without complete consent. Mortgages executed secretly. And when questioned, Mr. Brown said this was all for the benefit of the family." Christine's gaze did not leave Robyn's face. Janelle straightened up, nodding mildly as if justified. Robyn hid in her hands. She muttered a word to Kody, her lips shaking, but he shook his head furiously, his jaw set. The lawyer went on. "But what good family? The same family that these funds were intended to support has been broken, manipulated, and left with no security. Meanwhile, Mr. Brown and Mrs. Brown, Robyn Brown, got to enjoy their $1 million estate, while the others were instructed to be patient, wait for promises never kept." The gallery gasped. Even Mary, long silent, dropped her eyes, fingers drawing circles along the rim of her notebook. The judge addressed Kody. "Mr. Brown, do you deny that this LLC was formed using money withheld from the other participants?" Kody shifted uncomfortably in his seat, anger dancing across his features. "It wasn't like that. I was trying to save what was ours. If I had told them the whole thing, they wouldn't have gotten it. They always—" "Answer the question," the judge interrupted, hard and cold. Kody's shoulders stiffened. "Yes, I signed it." A joint intake of breath was drawn through the room. It was a confession. The sort that Robyn's tears could not wipe away, the sort that peeled away the disguise of family piety he had donned for decades. Christine's lawyer moved on. "And did Robyn Brown gain from this cover-up?" Kody's face twisted. He paused, looking at Robyn, whose cheeks were tear-streaked. She shook her head slightly, silently pleading with him not to say anything. But too late now. "Yes," Kody mumbled, almost inaudible. She knew. The ensuing gasp was louder this time. The gavel came down for order. Robyn wailed, her voice cracking. "No! That isn't true. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know the documents. I trusted him. I trusted my husband. But they had the hollow ring of a defense now. They were no longer the words of a frightened woman running through the motions of denial, but the final desperate echoes." Christine remained motionless, her mouth upturned in the faintest of smiles. It was not victory. It was relief. Relief that after all the years she had been silenced, the truth was finally on record. The judge rested back in his chair, the evidence weighing heavy in the air. "The court has heard sufficient. Mrs. Brown's plea has been recorded, but it can't erase the facts. The documents are self-explanatory. The concealment was intentional. The benefit was mutual. And the damage? Irreparable." Robyn fell to silent tears, holding on to Kody's arm, but he wrenched himself free, his fury boiling more than her tears could calm. The facade was shattered. The ideal family fantasy was in shambles, revealed for what it had been, a skillfully crafted deception. And the verdict? It was no longer a question of if, only when. The courtroom was hushed except for the rustle of papers and the quiet sniffling of Robyn. But the hush wasn't serenity, it was tension. A tempest brewing, holding its breath for the first crack of lightning. The judge turned to Christine Brown. "Mrs. Brown, do you want to testify?" Christine rose slowly, her navy blazer sharp against the warm wood sheen of the courtroom. She did not look at the judge, nor at the jury, but at Kody, the man who had offered her partnership, the man who had stood in front of the cameras evangelizing love, oneness, and divine destiny, and who had, in secret, taken from her dignity and from her choice. Her lawyer stepped forward. "Mrs. Brown, tell the court in your own words why you're here today." Christine's voice had shaken for a moment, but then it gained its strength. "I am here because I was told all my life that we were one family, that every decision was made for all of us, that my children and I counted just as much as anyone else. But that wasn't the case. The reality, I was invisible. My children were invisible. We were informed there wasn't sufficient funds for braces, for homes, for college, and yet Robyn's children were provided everything they required. We were instructed to deprive ourselves while they constructed a castle for themselves." She stopped, her eyes shining. "And when I asked them about it, I was made to feel selfish, manipulative, obedient. But I wasn't any of those things. I was simply a wife who wanted equity, a mother who wanted stability for my children. And each time I was asked to shut up, to trust the process, to wait for blessings that didn't arrive." Gasps of shock ran through the gallery. Even the court reporter hesitated in her typing for a moment. Christine's lawyer nodded. "And what did you find regarding the finances?" Christine's fists gripped the railing. "That the money was never missing. It was concealed, transferred, spent on security systems, furniture, vacations, and indulgences that I was told did not exist. My children went without so someone else could have more." Her voice broke. For the first time, she glanced at Robyn, who sat shaking, her face hidden in tissues. "And you knew. Don't deny it. You knew every dollar, every transfer, every falsehood." Robyn cried harder, but Christine didn't waver. When Christine walked away from the stand, the eyes of the jury followed her, as if gravity itself had moved in the direction of her truth. Then it was Janelle's turn. Janelle stood, calm but exhausted, with the kind of strength that came from years of silent perseverance. Where Christine was flame, Janelle was rock, immovable, solid, unbending. Her lawyer inquired, "Mrs. Brown, how were you personally impacted by the defendant's actions?" Janelle drew a breath. "I am a realistic person. I had faith in the dream of Coyote Pass. I invested in it. I labored for it. I built my life around it. But when I went to take my share, to check on where the money was, I was informed there was nothing there. That we couldn't afford to proceed. And then I found out why." She looked at the papers spread on the table. "Because my investment, the inheritance of my children, was diverted. Because the dream was not real. It was a trick to keep me bound to something that was never going to include me to begin with." Her tone became firmer, more incisive. "This is not about money. This is about trust. And it was broken, repeatedly, deliberately, and with no remorse." The lawyer took a step back. "And how do you feel today here?" Janelle gazed at Kody. Her eyes did not change. "Free. Because for the first time, the lies no longer work. For the first time, everyone knows what we endured. And that freedom means more than any square inch of property ever could." A murmur went through the courtroom, the sort that goes around when truth at last cuts through the air like lightning. Kody jerked convulsively in his seat, fists balled, face reddening. He attempted to speak, but the judge shut him up with one raised hand. Christine and Janelle had spoken, and what they said was not only testimony, it was a reckoning. The documents had talked their jury. They had heard the figures. But now they heard the heart. The ultimate family fantasy wasn't a money scam. It was an emotional trap. And within this courtroom, finally the doors were unlocked. But what would happen next would push Kody and Robyn to the brink even more, because the judge had a final witness ready on the stand. And that witness would shatter what little defense they have left. The doors to the courtroom swung open and all eyes turned. Someone entered, steady, silent, but with an energy that immediately changed the atmosphere in the room. It wasn't Janelle. It wasn't Christine. It was Mindy Jessup, Robyn's niece, the nanny, the one person Kody and Robyn had assumed would never utter a word. Robyn gasped, holding her tissue in a death grip, as if she could stifle the inevitable. Kody growled under his breath, his eyes closing into slits of fury. The judge nodded forward. "Please come to the stand." Mindy moved quietly, her blazer plain, her hair pulled back, no drama. She appeared like someone with nothing to gain and everything to lose, and that made her words all the more compelling. Christine and Janelle stiffened. They knew this was it. The attorney for the plaintiffs started. "Ms. Jessup, you worked for the defendants, Kody and Robyn Brown, from late 2019 to 2022, right?" "Yes." "And as part of your job, you resided in or about their home almost daily?" "Yes, 5 or 6 days a week." "And in so doing, you witnessed financial, personal, and familial things pertaining to this case?" Mindy stopped, her gaze darting quickly toward her aunt. "Yes." The court fell silent. "Please explain to the court what you saw." Mindy drew a breath. "I was paid in direct deposits from K&R Holdings. Every other week on time. The funds never originated from Kody or Robyn's individual accounts. They were from the very same company where money from the family LLC was being redirected." The lawyer nodded. "And did you ever catch snatches of conversation regarding the same?" Mindy nodded slowly. "Yes. Kody referred to it as their nest egg. He said the other wives would never be able to grasp financial planning. He said Christine was too emotional, Janelle too independent, Mary too bitter. So they stored the money between them?" Gasp echoes. Kody's fists pounded the table, but the judge's gavel came crashing down. "Order!" The attorney continued. "Did Robyn ever admit these transfers?" Mindy's eyes shone with tears, but her voice was unshakable. "Yes, I asked why so much money was being placed in that account. She told me, it's for our children. The others had their opportunity. This is for our future." Christine's jaw clenched. Janelle blinked to hold back tears. "And during COVID, were the rules enforced equally?" Mindy's face set in a glare. "No, Robyn's family over every day. They laughed, ate dinner, hugged, had birthdays. Christine's children were sent away. Janelle's sons were labeled as irresponsible. Isabel pleaded with her dad to be present for her surgery, and Robyn informed him it was an attempt at manipulation." The jury moved uneasily, glances flicking to Kody, sitting red-faced and silent. The lawyer stopped, then struck one final blow. "Ms. Jessup, did the defendants deliberately mislead the plaintiffs and appropriate family funds?" Mindy swallowed hard. "Yes, I didn't want to believe it at first. But I saw it. Every day, and I can't remain silent anymore." Robyn sobbed openly, whispering, "No, no, no." But it was too late. The truth was no longer rumor. It was testimony, direct, from within their own home. The defense lawyer attempted to shake Mindy on cross-examination, implying family bias or bitterness, but it didn't work. Every sentence she uttered had the ring of irrefutable truth. When she finally left the stand, Christine reached out and gave her hand a squeeze. Janelle mouthed, "Thank you." And the jury? They regarded Kody and Robyn with eyes that no longer had anything to do with neutrality. The charade was over. But what nobody anticipated, not even Janelle or Christine, was that Robyn herself would be next on the stand. And in her final plea, she would attempt to save it all. The catch? The judge had already heard enough. The courtroom had been opened to the crack by papers. It had been shattered by Mindy Jessup's words. Everyone was aware that the defense would play one last card, and everyone's attention was focused on the woman who had wept silently since the trial started. Robyn Brown. Her lawyer led her to the stand, offering her tissues on the way. Her mascara was already smudged, her hands shaking. She was a fragile, vulnerable-looking woman. The embodiment of a woman attempting to keep a story together that was already in shreds. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Brown, do you want to testify?" Robyn's voice broke. "Yes, Your Honor." She breathed deeply, then continued. "I never requested that this life be destroyed. I never wished for the family to be shattered. I loved them. I tried to love them all. I wanted peace, harmony, a secure home for all of our children. I did my best." The attorney for the plaintiffs didn't interject. They understood the jury needed to witness her play this out to its entirety. Robyn wiped at her eyes with a crumpled tissue. The money wasn't stolen. It wasn't hidden. It was put aside. For safekeeping. For the children. I implored Kody to consider the future, college funds, safety. And yes, the account was in our name, but only because someone needed to handle it. The others, and they didn't comprehend how much was involved. I didn't want to hurt them. I just wanted to help. Her voice increased, became more desperate. Christine walked away. Janelle questioned everything. Mary stopped believing in us.
What was I supposed to do?
Just sit there and watch the family disintegrate? I fought for it. I fought for all of us. Kody rocked forward in his chair, his head nodding wildly, as if her words might repair what was already broken. But the jurors' faces spoke volumes. They weren't moved. They weren't persuaded. They'd heard the figures, the evidence, the facts. And then the cross-examination. Christine and Janelle's lawyer emerged. Calm, unflinching, cutting. Mrs. Brown, you state the money was reserved for the children. Which children? Robyn blinked. All of them. The lawyer's eyebrow shot up. All of them? Then why were disbursements made solely for your residence? Why was the trust deed written only in your name? Why were your children's expenses taken care of while others were left to go without basic necessities? Robyn struggled, her voice cracking. Because they were younger. They needed more. The older children could look after themselves. We were being practical? The attorney interrupted her. Practical? Or preferential? The silence that followed that question was louder than her tears. Robyn wept again, sobbing helplessly, holding on to the last shred of her narrative. I didn't hurt anybody on purpose. I was just trying to protect my family. The attorney let the sentence dangle in the air. Then, with icy finality, they asked, Mrs. Brown, isn't it the case that in defending your family, you destroyed the rest of it? Robyn stopped moving. Her crying ceased. The tissue in her hand tore apart between her fingers. She didn't respond. Because the truth was already obvious. The judge gazed down at her, his eyes fixed, unmoved by the tears. He had heard this type of plea before, dramatic, emotional, but empty when weighed against proof. The gallery whispered. Some pitied them, others shook their heads. But everyone understood what this moment symbolized. Robyn's plea had been unsuccessful. Christine and Janelle observed in silence. No smiles, no jubilation. Just the tranquility of women who'd borne the burden of silence for so long, and put it down at last. And as Robyn descended from the stand, shoulders slumped, Kody's face contorted in anger. The man who had forever thought he was the one who could shape the story saw the walls come tumbling down. But there was still one last moment to go in this trial. The judge had not yet rendered his verdict. And when he did, it would all change. The courtroom was thick with atmosphere. Robyn's final plea still echoed in the cries of her tears, yet had not budged the jury. Had not shifted the evidence. The judge came back into the room after a brief recess. Everyone stood. Even Kody, though his steps were stiff, his face still red with anger. Christine and Janelle stood like statues, unflinching pillars of reserve. The judge looked around the room, his gaze stopping for a moment on each of the defendants before moving on to the plaintiffs. He nodded once, then started. In Brown v. Brown, this court has reviewed the evidence, testimony, and financial records presented. The case is not about faith or lifestyle, but about trust, fiduciary responsibility, and abuse of shared resources. The question before this court is straightforward. Were family resources improperly diverted for personal benefit? The room caught its breath. The judge's voice grew more pointed. The answer, documented and testified to, is yes. Kody's head fell into his hands. Robyn shook her head back and forth furiously, mumbling, No, 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 under her breath. The judge went on. On the charge of breach of fiduciary duty, in favor of the plaintiffs. On the charge of unjust enrichment, in favor of the plaintiffs. On the charge of emotional distress, in favor of the plaintiffs. Gasps spread through the gallery. Christine's eyes were shut, a solitary tear rolling down her face. Janelle clutched the arm of her lawyer, holding firm but breathing hard with relief. The judge's words were commanding. This court directs liquidation in full of K&R Holdings, Funds improperly diverted are to be redistributed. Coyote Pass is foreclosed and taken out of the defendant's hands. In addition, damages in the amount of $2.1 million are awarded to the plaintiffs. Kody's head jerked up, his eyes wide. Robyn released a strangled sob, her tissue now crumpled and useless in the trembling hands. But the judge had more. He leaned forward, his words as much a gavel as the one he held. This court is not deaf to the underlying manipulation and exploitation that has been here presented. Though civil damages are resolved today, this decision does not foreclose the possibility of future criminal investigation of fraud or tax evasion. The gallery erupted in murmurs. Reporters rushed for their phones. The jury remained in shock, experiencing the magnitude of what they had just been involved in. Christine extended her hand to Janelle's. For the first time in years, they smiled at one another, not with glee, but with quiet triumph. Back in the aisle, Kody's face contorted with rage and desperation. He mouthed something to Christine, but she would not look him in the eye. The judge rapped the gavel. Court adjourned. The sound resonated through the room like a coffin nail. But even as humanity rose, there was one final ripple of discontent. Because while the plaintiffs walked out of there with their heads held high, and while Kody sat brooding in silence, rumors started spreading. Rumors of closed files, of covered testimony, of names that had not yet been mentioned in open court. Christine and Janelle had emerged victorious. But was this truly the end? Or merely the beginning of something much nastier? The echo of the gavel still lingered in the air like a cloud of smoke after flames. The courtroom emptied, but no one departed differently. Christine and Janelle stepped out into the sunlight on the other side of courthouse doors. Reporters closed in, microphones thrust forward, but the women were silent. They had no words to say. Their silence was more powerful than any headline. They had been instructed for years to be quiet, to suffer, to safeguard the family dream. Today, silence was strength. Within the courthouse, Robyn sat in her chair. Her makeup smeared, her complexion wan, her eyes glazed. She gripped her rosary in shaking fingers, mouthing prayers even as the world beyond judged her. Kody sat next to her, fingers cramped against his temples. The man who used to require devotion from 4 women now had none. The patriarch was the pariah. But hidden beneath the turmoil, something more sinister remained. Christine and Janelle's lawyer, Ms. Chararma, moved soundlessly to her clients and said something none of the reporters or cameras could pick up. Christine's weak smile twitched. Janelle's eyes flashed for a second before her face went back to stone. What did she say to them? In the rear of the courthouse, 2 men in suit and tie traded folders stamped confidential. They were not civil players. They were not with TLC. They were government investigators. And within those folders were names, dates, accounts, the sort of proof that doesn't just take land or money, but liberty. Robyn dabbed at her eyes. Kody, they can't. They won't. But Kody remained silent. His was a heavier silence than hers. He knew. This wasn't about money anymore. It wasn't about vows that were broken, favoritism, or lies. It was about something more. Christine glanced back once, her eyes locking with Kody's through the glass of the courthouse doors. Not with anger, not with pity, but with finality. And as she walked away forever, words she'd spoken months before rang through the air. Let's not have to sit and endure the heartache anymore. The heartache was finished. But the reckoning? That had only just started. Because sealed testimony whispered in halls and filed away still awaits to emerge. And when it does, it won't just rewrite a family story. It could destroy careers. It could destroy marriages. And it could put Kody Brown on a docket he can never leave. Not family court, but federal.